What's up, guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over the balance update that is coming tomorrow. So I think it's important to note this isn't meant to be like your first take of the balance changes, obviously, because Clash Royale releases it in game and other YouTube channels have access sometimes to the balance changes before I do. So this is more of like a pro's take on how this is going to change the meta, what cards are going to be stronger, whether something is a nerf or a buff, because people don't always seem to immediately get the same understanding of changes that I do, which doesn't mean I'm always right, but it means I play this game a lot, and I understand the mechanics. So I mean, I'm just sharing my thoughts with you guys. Very welcome to discuss it in the comments as always. And I'm going to try to do this every balance update. Also going to try to do more of the podcast type stuff. Oh, and the thumbnail is awesome, by the way, so I used it, but I was going to do like a pre-balance update where I gave what I thought would be the best, but wasn't able to get it out in time, so I just decided to do this instead. So the thumbnail has some cards that I would have liked to be buffed, or nerfed rather, and I can kind of talk about that as well. So first up, I think the best change, obviously, is the nerf to the Royale Ghost. They didn't just slap it on the wrist and let it remain meta like they did with Night Witch, which wasn't necessarily intentional. But they gave it a 6% damage nerf, and they didn't stop there. They also nerfed the invisibility delay. Now the ghost isn't going to have that moment to where if you're countering it with your own ghost, it'll go invisible right as yours tries to hit it or something like that. You're not going to have the struggle to keep it in ghost form. Your tower gets a little bit more leeway with finishing it off, and it won't get to the tower and get a hit off with like 1 HP. And the hit speed is also nerfed, so it doesn't hit quite as fast. So that's like an overall, it's more than a 10% damage nerf because of the hit speed, I believe, and the invisibility delay is just huge. So that is a very good nerf for that card. We're not going to see it used in every single archetype possible now. It's actually going to be reasonably nerfed in archetypes that it doesn't necessarily synergize and belong with. Next, I'm really interested with, I don't know if I said it on video before, but I do think the Zappies could be a problematic card if they become too strong because of just how annoying it is. Not necessarily annoying, but stun locking cards is not necessarily healthy. But I think the fact that their damage didn't go up and the fact that their hit rate didn't go up, and it can be hard to get them auto lock on anyway, and they're very weak to poison and fireball. I think now they have a purpose because they can be used in poison bait decks and fireball bait decks, possibly 3 Musk. I don't think 3 Musk. I think they're going to be maybe good in beat down, or I could see them being in controls, but I'm really going to see them in like fireball or poison bait decks, but we'll see. I have a couple ideas that I may make a video with if it's good. And Zappies will be useful for sure because now they're pretty good counters to like Lava Hounds getting a buff. They're very good against swarm units, air swarm units now, like minions and everything. They'll be very good against. So it'll be exciting to see how they interact, and they could possibly find their way in a few decks. Okay, so Hunter is next up, and Hunter I want to spend a lot of time talking about because just from initial reactions from Twitter, Hunter, some people and even my like teammates, some of them thought this was a nerf, and I don't. This isn't, like, I could be wrong, but there's no way this is a nerf. So if you look at it, so the problem Hunter had before is if it locks onto a target at max range, it does no damage. If you put like an ice golem like 5 tiles away or whatever at its max range, when it's on offense, it locks onto that ice golem and takes like 6 shots to kill it. Because the ice golem has to get close to it first. So, okay, if you're reducing the Musketeer's range, then yes, that's a huge nerf to her. But reducing the Hunter's range is actually a buff because previously, if you're using Hunter on defense, you have to place it really close to the troop anyway. That's already his strongest zone. Now, if you place him in the back because you're at max elixir and you have to play him, when something gets into his range, he's already doing more damage based on that. Because his initial shot will do more damage, more bullets will hit his target because he's not gonna shoot them when they're farther away now. And this matters a little bit less in ground scenarios where the troops are approaching him anyway. But now this is very impactful for ranged troops. Like, he's gonna do more damage to Musketeer. He's gonna do more damage to anything that's ranged, for sure. And he's also way better on offense because once he's on offense, if he locks onto a tower, he's now going to be doing 100 to 200 damage more, I would predict, for his shots because more will hit the tower. And on offense in general, if they try to distract him from afar, he's going to do more damage to whatever they're distracting him with. So, and not only that, the bullet spread is slightly smaller. So he's going to be, in two different ways, they increase his damage. And his projectile range remains the same. So if he shoots something and something's still like farther away, the bullets are going to go as far. So maybe if his projectile range went down, I need to charge my iPad after this, but whatever. Then that would be a nerf in some way. But in all ways, this looks like a buff to me. The only scenario where I could see him being worse now is, say, a minion horde is 5 tiles away. But I don't even think if they were full range away, it wouldn't kill. I don't think it would kill them all. I really don't see how this could be a nerf in any way whatsoever. And I understand people saying how it could be, but based on his mechanics, how he works, this is a buff. It's definitely a buff. He's going to be better on offense now. And he's just going to do more damage in most scenarios. The only thing where he's going to stay the same is if you're at point blank range, which is already how people defended with him. Alright, so let's go ahead and go on to the Night Witch. So initial bats spawn quicker. I saw some like quick reactions to this where they're like, oh, Night Witch is going to be OP again, but they also nerf bats. So I understand why they did this. I think Night Witch is going to be in almost the exact same spot, good behind tanks. There's not much else to talk about that. We'll talk a little bit more about bats. The hit speed goes from 1 second to 1.1 second. So I think also people don't understand how big a nerf 0.1 second is on hit speed for swarm units. Like for 5 bats or for more bats when it's a Night Witch's scenario, that's a pretty big nerf because previously like they'd get 3 hits off before they died, and there's 5 of them. That's 0.3. So say they all get 3 hits off. Not necessarily like what happens, but it's 0.3 seconds times 5, so that's like 1.5 seconds worth of nerfs and like a basic scenario, which is pretty big because that's an attack and a half less in damage. That's like 100 something damage less, like 130, whatever. That's just like a basic scenario, and it's even bigger when behind a tank because they're going to get more hits off. So I'd say that's actually a pretty big nerf to Night Witch, but then they gave it the initial bats one, so it'll probably balance out. But that's a pretty good nerf to bats. If you saw my thumbnail, I would have liked to see a nerf to at least one other Zap Bait card. I would have liked to see Skeleton Barrel or Inferno Dragon. Probably Inferno Dragon I think deserves like a small health nerf. It just survives with a little bit too much health in most scenarios. I will hint on some other changes though and say maybe it was okay that she'd get nerfed. I just do think like some aspect of that Zap Bait deck that's really common right now needed to be nerfed a little bit harder. Lava Hound being buffed by 5%. I've said this before, I wouldn't even mind if Lava Hound got a little bit more of a buff, but they just nerfed Loon. Because right now, if you're running Lava Hound, it's almost guaranteed that you have to be running, especially with a HP buff, because it'll tank for longer. You're utilizing less of its pups and more of its just health for air tanks. So now you're going to see more Lava Loon. And I don't think it's bad. I like Lava Hound, but I don't like seeing just Lava Loon because Balloon is viable in other decks on its own. Like it's been used throughout this meta as like a cycle balloon and as the win condition with like Miner, and they don't run a spell usually. But Lava Hound isn't viable without Loon for the most case. People try to make it work with Miner decks, and every now and then it works, but mainly it's Lava Loon that is viable once you buff Lava Hound. So I would like to see separation a little bit. Like Lava Loon should still be viable, but I would like to see Lava Hound viable with other things. They shouldn't be mutually exclusive when it comes to Lava Hound being used, because Balloon is already viable on its own. But that's not, I don't think the buff to Lava Hound was large enough to justify nerfing Loon. I think you could buff Lava Hound a little bit more and then nerf Loon. So next up, like a small nerf, but next up would be Goblin Hut. I'm very disappointed in this change. I'm glad they nerfed Hut, but this should have been a larger nerf. 1 less spawn in total. Like really? That's not the issue of the card. The issue is you poison it and it still spawns like 5 or 6 more. I guess in the poison interaction this could be somewhat impactful, but still it's like 2 or 3. Like I think 3 would have been the ideal number. Like if it spawned 3 less Spirit Goblins over its duration, that's actually a pretty sizable nerf because you get multiple huts up in a game. But only 1 less spawn is kind of minor. Maybe they'll retouch it, but I just don't think huts are all that healthy when they're oppressive. When they're slightly viable, like Hut was not in this meta but the one before, it's fine. But when they get to the point to where they are like a required card in like 50% of the meta decks, they're really annoying to deal with on like a game by game basis, just because huts are. I mean, it's a hut. Like, I don't think I have to explain that to many people. Not just because I dislike the card. I use it in a lot of my decks right now because it's strong. I use whatever's good, but it's just kind of an annoying gameplay to have to worry about huts. I will say I'm glad Elixir Collector isn't that great right now because of the RNG of it with starting hands, and if you don't have a punish, it loses you the game. So I prefer Goblin Hut over Elixir Collector. It's kind of that steady, solid card, but I would prefer neither to be in the meta, to be honest. But I'm glad it did get a nerf. I just would have liked it to be a little bit bigger, not like major, not like make it terrible, but you know. Alright, and something Clash with that suggested, Mini P.E.K.K.A. and Lumberjack both get a 7% HP buff. Mini P.E.K.K.A. could be seen in like those hog decks again, potentially like Miner, and Lumberjack will be good in Beatdown. I actually expect to see a really big return of Golem with Tornado and Rocket, and I may make a video on that deck. But yeah, Lumberjack and Mini P.E.K.K.A. getting a pretty good health buff. Neither were used too much, so I think that's a good buff, and Lumberjack will take that role in probably in Beatdown that Ghost had, because Ghost won't be that useful in Beatdown anymore in my opinion because it's more balanced now. And Mortar, this is another one that was kind of debated. Minimum range 4.5 to 3.5, so Mortar may be a little bit better when it's used defensively, but when something gets on it, it's still not shooting. So I really think this is a slight nerf because it's easier to distract it now with like Ice Golem with ranged troops. It's not just going to randomly, because you play it mainly for the chip. And now there's going to be less scenarios where it just locks onto the tower, and this is a really big help to things like ranged troops, like a Musketeer, not Musketeer, but like Electro Wiz, where it'll target the Musketeer, which helps the Musketeer. I mean the Electro Wizard, so that it locks on, and they sit in that fight back and forth. That Electro Wiz is obviously gonna win because it's not like a swarm unit like Goblin Gang or something. That also moves too fast for the Mortar anyway, but I think that's a good little nerf. It's just pretty dominant on ladder right now. So the other things that I would like to touch on, Zappies are going to be really cool. Hunter's going to get a big buff. It's going to be really used, I think. Goblin Hut's going to stay meta. Bat's got a slight nerf, but the Zap bait decks didn't have that big of a nerfs, so I think they'll still be used. Prince is going to be really popular in this meta. It's still really good against, and it's good against Hunter, so it's going to be good. Night Witch will stay used. Lava Hound will be used a little bit more. I don't know if it's going to be meta. Ghost will find a way in decks that it's more apt to actually fit in. I think he'll see his way out of those like Zap bait decks probably. I think you'll see him more in like minor decks. I think he's a good little pressure card. Maybe graveyard. I don't know. We'll just have to test him. I mean, it's a pretty big nerf, and I don't think he was all that oppressive before. He was obviously in need of a nerf, but I don't know that he was just like he wasn't on XE or release Nightwish level for sure. After having played with him for a while, I got to where I could counter him pretty easily. He just won't be getting as many annoying shots where he survives with 1 HP now. And it won't be less punishing when he does. He won't take half your tower if you try to tank him. And so the other things, yeah, like I said, I would have liked to see an Inferno Dragon nerf. I would have also liked to see a little bit, perhaps a buff to Graveyard to counter poison a little bit better. I like Graveyard, so that's somewhat biased, but the reason I would like to see that is because it's just like a full counter right now. But Graveyard's in a decent place, so I'm not upset about that. Yeah, I think that's about it. Skeleton Barrel and Inferno Dragon still gonna be strong, so that Zap Bait combo is strong. Maybe them nerfing one part of it with like bats is decent enough, but I would have liked to see 2. It'll still be viable, but it'll be weaker. And I mean, Goblin Hut will be weaker, I guess, even though it's only 1 nerf. But overall, these were really good balance changes. I don't think they over buffed or over nerfed anything. I think the changes that they did make were very good. Well, I'd say they under buffed Goblin Hut, but other than that, the changes they made were solid. They didn't make any changes this time around where I was like, why would you do that? I think they're getting a little bit more in touch with what the players want. And I mean, you can want a lot of things, and a lot of people have different opinions. So overall, they did a good job. Hopefully, they will continue to hit on balance changes this well. And thank you guys for listening to my opinions. Please discuss in the comments, and I will do my best to reply. And I will see you guys probably tomorrow with a new meta deck. So peace.